Here are 15 strange facts about King George II, who was last considered crazy, living in confinement and pain until death. King George II is known in history as the Mad King, because he ruled the British Kingdom but was not in accordance with his own body and mind. The story of King George II is full of tragedy and drama. Born in 1738 in London, George III suffered from pain and mental instability until the end of his life. The King of England was a king who hated his eldest son, and once raved for 58 hours straight. Here are 15 strange facts about King George III that few people know. The first, he went crazy. King George II suffered from mental instability from 1765 until his death in 1820. During this ordeal, George's urine was brown or purple. He loved to run around the castle as if he had lost all reason. Clearly, this condition is very disturbing for the royal family, palace, and political institutions. Historians don't know exactly what the cause is, but many think it's due to genetic disease. Second, George became king after his predecessor died in the toilet. Since his father died unexpectedly in 1752, George inherited the throne directly from his grandfather. However, the circumstances in which George II inherited the throne were less than dignified, his grandfather's reign ending because he died while using the toilet. The third, born prematurely and thought not to survive. King George II was born prematurely. Everyone was sure he would not live, so the baptism was carried out as soon as possible. But in fact, he was able to survive, even though in that era infant mortality was relatively high, so baby George's survival was truly astonishing. The fourth, spent his last years confined to the castle while his eldest son became regent. While he was sick, went out of the palace to avoid public attention. But in 1811 conditions got even worse. So, his eldest son and heir ruled as regent in his place, while George II himself was confined to Windsor Castle, lost in his own confusion until his death in 1820. The fifth, he might have been accidentally poisoned by arsenic. The cause of King George II's madness is not yet known, but scientists analyzed and found very high levels of arsenic in the follicles, and it is believed that this may have triggered the king's illness. The sixth, very protective of his daughter. George and his wife, Queen Charlotte, loved their 6 daughters so much that they were given an extraordinary education that was usually only reserved for boys. He loves her so much that he is so protective and makes it difficult for his daughter to get married. Unfortunately, the girls didn't gain true freedom until their father was locked up during his madness. The girls were not allowed to marry until they were 30 or 40 years old. The seventh, he hated his eldest son and heir. King George followed the tradition of Hanoverian kings who hated their heirs. One of the hottest arguments was when the son couldn't wait to take the throne. During his madness, King George threw his son against the wall. The eighth, the American Revolution upset him. In the United States, George LLL is known as a ruler who trampled on the rights of democratically minded Americans. The rebellion of the Americans greatly disturbed and confused King George LLL. In his view, he simply did not believe his people would act as they did. He wanted Great Britain to put down the rebellion and was willing to beat his people into submission. Of course, this only makes things worse. The ninth, his wife gave birth to almost 15 babies. During their 57 years together, King George and his wife Queen Charlotte had a total of 15 children. Unfortunately, not all of them survived to adulthood. The 10th, he was the first Hanoverian king to speak English as a first language. George was a Hanoverian king, meaning his own family came from the small kingdom of Hanover in what is now Germany. George I could barely speak English, while George LL spoke with a thick German accent. Only then did he become George II, who spoke English as his first language. The 11th, he is a loyal king with one wife. From the start, George's former sons led scandalous lives with many secret wives, mistresses, and illegitimate offspring. However, King George II was different, because he chose to love only one woman, namely his wife. Queen Charlotte, whom he married when he was 17 years old. The 12th, heartbroken when his beloved daughter died. King George III's favorite daughter was Princess Amelia, who suffered from poor health throughout her life. On his deathbed in 1810, he gave his father a ring with the words "Remember me" inside. The king never got over his daughter's death. He was almost inconsolable and always thought he was still alive. The 13th, his illness made him babble continuously. One of the physical, mental, and behavioral symptoms that occurred during his illness was that he babbled continuously. In 1819, he even raved for up to 58 hours, until he was literally foaming at the mouth. The 14th, his final years were spent in pain and confusion. George's problems were not only mental but also physical, suffering from severe aches and pains. He even experienced convulsions so that the helpers had to sit still. He also had cataracts that blinded him, and his hearing worsened as he got older. Because of that, he became confused because he couldn't communicate easily anymore. The 15th, has 9 sons but finds it difficult to produce a male heir. Because the king hated his sons so much, he had difficulty determining who his heir would be. When his eldest son became George IV in 1820, he had no heir to the crown, so it passed to his younger brother, William. When William died, the crown passed to his 18-year-old niece Victoria, the only surviving legitimate child of 4th son George III. Those are 15 facts about King George.